Okay, live again. Let's pop this chat out. I'm not expecting anyone to actually be here on the original live stream. I am at 8 in the morning, which is different than my normal 10 o'clock time, 11 o'clock Eastern time. Um, but I was praying about whether to do it early or late. Just got off of work, after working 12 hours, feeling good. Yes, that's what I'm going to say. I'm feeling good. So, anyways, I'm going to put a little something down here. Hello. And if you happen to join me, if not later, just throw something in the comments. So we're back today studying the return of Jesus. And as many of you know who have been watching my stream before, I contend and suggest that Jesus is returning in Revelation chapter 10. Oh, hey, King Z. Well, you guys have that time difference. Maybe it's a little easier for you. So appreciate you being here, brother. So, anyways, yeah, so we're talking about this return of Jesus. And so let us get started. Oh, I was going to say though, I was watching some videos and I love to watch prophecy videos, and it just watching so many videos or watching scrolling through them, and people just like to talk about the news. I it just talk. Let's just talk about the Bible. Let's talk about what the Bible says about these things, and then be watchful waiters. Just talking about every little bit of news, it just drives me. Yeah. Anyways, all right. So we are going to be talking about a loud voice that roars like a lion, and in Revelation 10:3. So we are here, and he cried out with a loud voice, like a lion roars. And when he cried out, the seven thunders sounded their own voices. Now, the question is this is referring back to this powerful angel. And we basically have two options when we're talking about this powerful angel. It's an angel like a cherubim or some other heavenly host, or this is Jesus. Now, as I've shown in the other three videos, Jesus was referred to as the angel of the Lord, angel of Yahweh before. And we talked about how a cloud motif fits and rainbow fits in. So today we're going to talk about how this lion fits in. So, when we look at symbolism, right? So, we're talking about symbolic things. We need to let the Bible speak about the symbols. We don't make up what these symbols mean. We don't try to put some type of spin on them. We're doing a Bible study class on our Wednesday small group, and we're talking about how to read the Bible. And next week, we're actually going to be talking about prophecy. We talked about poetry before, and we talked about narratives and historical. And so, but we're going to talk about prophecy. And in symbolism, people want to interpret it or put the symbol and make it what it's not. The Bible tells us what the symbol is. So, when we look at the rainbow, we saw that there is two different ways that it's approached. One, it was the appearance of God in Ezekiel, and we saw in Revelation. For the nations, for the rainbow, it refers back to the Noahic covenant and the promise of the nations of how God's not going to judge the world or come to where He's not going to flood it again, but He's going to come in fire. When we looked at the cloud motif, the cloud symbol, it's how the Son of Man comes in Daniel 7, and it's also how Yahovah appeared to Israel during the Exodus. But for the nations, it's judgment language. It's the day of the Lord. It's a day of clouds. So he's going to come in this day of the Lord, day of clouds. For the lion motif, for the lion symbol, where it's going to refer back to this coming king from Genesis 49, and we're going to kind of trace that through the Old Testament. But we also is really interesting, and I didn't learn this until I started studying it, but it also points towards the nations of how he will tear the nations like how they tore others. And so you see this dual fold fulfillment here during Jesus' second coming of how he's going to treat Israel and how he's going to treat the nations. Now, one of the questions that we have here, whoops, let's go back. So, the first question, though, we need to answer is this strong angel. As I said before, I'm going to suggest that it's Jesus, but we want to look at a couple of scripture verses. There's two verses in Revelation that talk about lion in addition to Revelation 10:3. The first is Revelation 5:5. It says, "Don't weep. Behold, the lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has conquered, so that he can open the scroll and its seven seals." But we also see in Revelation 4:7 that the first living creature was similar to a lion. And so we get an angel described, this living creature described as a lion, but we also get Jesus, the lion of the tribe of Judah. So people are trying to make it, oh, it's just a regular angel. It's not really Jesus. So let's take a look at how lion is used in the Bible, in the New Testament and the Old Testament. All right. So first, the word lion, it's used over 140, well, used 144 times, 45 times in 120 verses, and that's in my Lexham English Bible. And so it varies. Some will have it 118. Now, lioness is used 9 times, and it's always used with lion. 17 times we see lion and roar used together. And 57 times we see roar used, and it's in relationship to lion in 48 verses. So we're going to take a look at how these words are used. All right. So if we look at this idea of lion roars, now we see it used in multiple ways, and I broke this down, and we're gonna go a little bit more in depth in each of these areas. You'll see it used of those that devour, and there's a large group of that devour. You'll see it regarding Israel. You'll see it regarding an actual lion, so you expect it to be a lion. Roar is used just as the sea voices roar, like a multitude roar. So you'll see roar used that way. And there's a couple of miscellaneous ways that really don't make a big difference. There's Yahovah will judge the devourer. So Yahovah, God is described as a lion who will devour or tear the devourers. It's used of Messiah. It's used when people call to be saved from the lion. So people will call. You see this especially in Psalms that they're calling out to be saved from the lions. We see it regarding angels. We see it in the four living beings' face. And we also see it in reference to the day of the Lord and judgment. All right, so let's break this down. Now, the most common use is used as a lion, as an animal. It's used about 46 times out of the 145 times. It's a direct reference to lions as animals and human interaction with them. It just makes sense. The most common is Daniel 6. Remember Daniel and the lion's den. Daniel's thrown into the lion's den, and the lions try to eat him, and they get back the next morning, and he's not eaten by them. And he says, "Come out, Daniel." You also see it used 31 times in Judges, Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles. So Samson killing a lion and the honeycomb in the lion's body and all that type of stuff. And then you see it also of animals in regards to the day of the Lord in Amos 3:4 and Amos 5:19. And when we get to the day of the Lord, because we're going to talk about it, you'll see how that is used. Even though it's used in prophecy, I think it's actually speaking of an actual lion. So we expect it. That's how we expect lion to be used. But lion is then also used symbolically. And that's what we're going to really focus on today. Now, first, let's take a look at angels and how lions are used in relationship to angels. So we see that it's used in the Old Testament, in Ezekiel, and in Revelation. And it's reused in regards to their physical appearance. So let's take a quick look at Ezekiel 1:10. Ezekiel 1:10. And the likeness of their faces was the face of a human in front, the face of a lion on the right of each of them, the face of an ox on the left, and the face of an eagle for each of them. We see it again in Ezekiel 10:14. And each one had four faces. The face of one was the face of a cherub. The face of the second was the face of a human. The face of the third was the face of a lion. And the fourth was the face of an eagle. So, and the cherubim rose, that is the living creatures that I saw at the Kibar River. So these creatures with four faces, one face looks like a lion, and it's called a living creature, is what it's called. The interesting thing is in Ezekiel, you don't hear, if you go through and read all of Ezekiel 1 and Ezekiel 10, I'm not going to go through and read it all, but they don't speak. You don't hear any utterance coming from them. You just hear about you see about their appearance, and you see how they move. You see that the spirit is in them and the wheel. That's what you see, but you don't hear them speak. But when we jump over to Revelation 4:7, we see something a little bit different. Well, it's not in 4:7, but it starts with the living creatures in 4:7. So the first living creature was similar to a lion. The second living creature was similar to an ox. The third living creature had a face like a man's. And the fourth living creature was similar to an eagle flying. And the four living creatures, each one of them had six wings apiece, eyes full of eyes around, inside, and out. And they don't rest day and night. And you hear them speak, holy, holy, holy. You hear them giving glory to God. And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to one who's seated on the throne. So in this situation, the living creatures that have a face of a lion speak. Now, what does their voice sound like? So their face looks like a lion, but that's not what it says in Revelation 10:3. Revelation 10:3 is the voice is like a roaring lion. But this one we get a face. So, what do they sound like? Now, they are mentioned 16 times in the book of Revelation. The most striking one is in Revelation 6:1. All right. And I watched when the Lamb seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying, like the sound of thunder. So they're not described as having a roaring voice like a roaring lion. It's like the sound of thunder. Come. So you get this kind of roaring, come. I wish I could do it. Roar, like rolling thunder. And come, and I looked, and behold, a white horse, and one seated on it. And what you see is over and over again in the second seal. You open the second seal, and I heard the second living creature saying, come. And so we're going to make the assumption that it sounded like the sound of thunder. Well, okay. Well, I remember, Kolan, when we were reading in Revelation 10:3, and we went into 10:4, it talked about it sounding like the seven thunders responded, right? So here he cried out with a loud voice like a lion roars, and when he cried out, the seven thunders sounded their own voices. So we get seven thunders sounding their voices. And when the seven thunders spoke, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying, seal up the things which the seven thunders spoke and do not write them. Okay, so maybe when the angel who sounds like a roaring lion spoke, maybe the living creatures are the seven thunders. Maybe there was four living creatures, but these are seven thunders. That would entail another Bible study. But what we learn from this is that the living creatures do not have the sound of a roaring lion. They have a sound of thunder. Now, if we want to say that those living creatures are the thunders that are responding, Again, we'll have to do a Bible study on that, and we'll probably get that at some point, if God so allows. Now, there's one other time that roar is used in Revelation. It's used in Revelation 8:5, but it's only used in two translations. Most translations don't translate this word as roar. It's Revelation 8:5. The angel took the censer and filled it with the fire from the altar and threw it to the earth. And there were thunders and sounds, lightnings, and an earthquake. This word here, three translations translated that as roar, but that's not the word is sound. It's not really a roar. Um, there's a different word for roar. So, one other time that thunder is used in Revelation 19:6, and you see, and I heard something like the sound of a great crowd, and something like the sound of many waters, something like the sound of powerful thunder, saying, Hallelujah, for the Lord God, the all powerful reigns. Let us rejoice and be glad. So this is a multitude, a large group. They have a sound like thunder, like a roar, sound of many waters, powerful thunder. But it's not the voice of a roaring lion. So, what do we take away from all that? What do we take away? Is that the four living creatures have a physical appearance of a lion, but their voice, when we hear a living creature speak, doesn't have the roaring of the lion, because that's not the imagery that God is trying to portray. Uh, and so to say that this is an angel or a cherub, I think does complete disservice to Messiah. I mean, people just they don't recognize who Messiah is. They want to say, "Oh yeah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah conquered," but yet this being, this strong angel, this powerful angel in Revelation 10 is not Messiah. It's another angel that's using a voice that roars like a lion. It's just they're trying to, you know, put tight shoes. Take your large foot of size 10 and put it into a size 8 shoe. You're just trying to mold it in there, and it's not working because you're not interpreting the symbolism and properly. So the creatures have actual literal faces like lions. This one is a voice like a lion roars because it's a symbol for something greater. What is it a symbol for? So it's a symbol for Messiah. So there's three primary verses for that we're going to look at in regards to how Messiah is called from the line of the tribe of Judah. And it goes back to Genesis 49:9. And I have it up here on my slide, but I'm going to actually go into the Logos Bible software and we're going to actually read it from there. So it says, Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bowed down, he crouched like a lion, and as a lioness, who shall rouse him? So we get this picture that Judah, this father is pronouncing some type of blessing to his children, and he's letting them know that Judah is a lion's cub. It's kind of a small one, right? It's a cub. It's a child. It's got to grow up still. Now, who is he? This is always one of the challenges in these prophecies. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. So is this my son Judah, or is this pointing to something else or someone else? And most people, even if you look back at Jewish scholars, they identify this as a sign for or early reference to Messiah. Because here's the verse that helps us understand that. Look, the scepter, so this idea of kingship, this idea of rulership, shall not depart from Judah. Well, there was no king yet. There was no king at this time. And they haven't even really entered into Egypt. They haven't come out of it. So this is a prophecy pointing to something future, that there's this kingship that's going to come from Judah. nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. So the ruler, the scepter shall not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes. Some people also translate it until he to whom it belongs comes. So this idea that it's for Messiah, it's for somebody in the lineage of Judah that will be yet in the future. And here's the key, and to him shall be the obedience of the nations. So we get two things that are happening. One is happening for Israel in regards to kingship, and one is happening to the nations where we get obedience. Kingship to Israel, obedience to the nations. And then it says, binding his donkey to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washes his clothing in the wine and his garment in the blood of grapes. I mean, the symbolism is just ripe going forward to the future. You think of the donkey that he rode into Jerusalem. You think of the wine and the symbol for the Passover meal and the wine that comes about with the Passover meal, which hadn't even been instituted yet, right? This is before Moses. So there's quite a bit of symbolism that's all pointing to Messiah here, pointing to Jesus. Now, this is reinforced in this Balaam prophecy. So now Israel is coming out of Egypt. They're coming out of and they're wandering through the wilderness, and they're trying to get into the promised land, and Balak the king is trying to stop them, and he calls over to a prophet named Balaam, and that's Balaam's donkey, and he comes over and he pronounces actual blessing upon Israel, upon the whole nation. And what we see is at the end of it, he reiterates this prophecy that was given back to Judah many years ago, hundreds of years ago. Balaam didn't know these things, but God is giving him these words to speak. It says, he crouches, he lies down like a lion, and like a lioness, who will rouse him? They who bless you will be blessed, and they who curse you will be cursed. But to understand the full context here, let's go up just a little ways. It's not long, so I'm going to read all of it. So he uttered this oracle and said, the declaration of Balaam, son of Beor, the declaration of a man whose eyes are closed, the declaration of the hearer of God's words, who sees the revelation of Shaddai, falling down, but whose eyes are uncovered. How good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. They are spread out like valleys, like gardens on a river, like aloes planted by Jehovah, like cedars at the waters. He will pour water from his buckets, and his offspring will be like many waters. His king will be higher than Agag or Gog, and his kingdom will be exalted. God, who brings him out of Egypt, is like the strength of a wild ox for him. He will devour the nations who are his enemies. He will break their bones. Who is this he? Israel? Or have we switched to another he? He will pierce them with his arrows. He crouches, he lies down like a lion, and as a lioness, who will rouse him? So this is one of the prophecies that Balaam gives. And we can see that he's talking about he, singular. Is this Israel? There's also given in Numbers 23:24. Look, the people will rise like the lion. He raises himself and will not lie down until he eats the prey and drinks the blood of the slain. So remember the two sides of the prophecy? One was kingship and one was what he's going to do to the nations. And so we see here at the end what he's going to do to the nation. Now let's again read of the prophecy, because you remember he did it a couple of times. because he uttered these ones. He's like, you blessed them. Balak says, he's blessed them. Balaam, how could you do that? Here, come stand over here. Maybe you could curse them better over here. Let's do it again. But this one's the first one. This one's in Numbers 23:24. It says, stand up, Balak, and hear. Listen to me, son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie, nor the son of humankind that he should change his mind. He said, and will he not do it? He has spoken, and will he not fulfill it? Behold, I have received a command to bless. When he has blessed, I cannot cause it to return. He has no regard for evil in Jacob, and he does not see trouble in Israel. Jehovah, his God, is with him, and a shout of a king is among them. A shout of a king is among the people, right? There is no king. They're going into the time of the judges. There's no king, but the shout of a king is among them. It's the person who's going to rise out of Judah is among them. The seed, right? The lineage is going to rise among them. Look, God who brings them out of Egypt is like the strength of a wild ox for them, because there is no sorcery against Jacob. There's no divination against Israel. Now it will be said to Jacob and Israel, what God has done. Look, the people will rise like the lion. He raises himself and will not lie down until he eats the prey and drinks the blood of the slain. So these prophecies, once again, the lion reference, that the lion is this idea of the Messiah, the king, who's the shout among the people of Israel, who's then going to rule them, but also subject the nations. Which then brings us to our Revelation 5:5 passage. And they said, do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has conquered, so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals. That they identify the Messiah, they identify Jesus as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So they're referring it back to Genesis. And so, excuse me, grab some water. So what we get here is we get this tie-in of Messiah, of Jesus, back to the original blessing to Judah, and this tie-in to kingship, the one who can now take it and rule, who can now also bring in the judgment of the nations. And we get tied into the prophecies of Balaam. Now, some people wanted to say that this was King David. And as we're going to see towards the end, I'm going to show you the actual scriptures in 2 Samuel 7, where it talks about this Davidic covenant, and it points to something future that's not David. There's a king that's going to have a throne that's above David's, or greater than David's, that is going to come. And so lion's not used in that passage, but if we understand these messianic kingship prophecies and how they're tied into lion, we can begin to pack other things on top of them. Okay, so the question is then, who is the lion that roars in Revelation 10? Well, as we see here, it's not the living beings, the 4 living beings and the angels. It's not an actual lion. Now, because it's a single being, it's even though Israel has some of these tie-ins, it's not them, and it's not those that devour. The only person that it could be is Messiah. And so, and if people don't see that, then they're not understanding the interrelationship of and symbolism of Scripture. They're just not. There's no easy way to put it. So, but there's more that's going on here. That there's a lot more that's going on with lion, and that's what I want to continue on. So the who is Messiah here. But what is Messiah doing? We've already got a hint. We already got a hint of kingship and judgment, but we're going to see that actually play out in the lion's symbolism that we see in the Old Testament. So, all right. So, how Israel and lions. So, now we're going to look at how lions relate to Israel. We already see that there's a future Messiah king and that Balaam blesses. So, we see these two uses. But we also see that there is some things that are going on related to, oh, that was supposed to be over there. I thought I had corrected it, so it doesn't. Anyways, during Jesus's first coming. So we also see how that is tied into Israel. And then we also see how Israel is devoured by others, that they call out to be saved from the lions that are devouring them, especially David in the Psalms. We do see a Moses blesses Gad and Dan in relationship to lions. And then we also see millennium and future peace. And in the temple, we see this reference to lions as well. We're going to look at some of those. So the first thing we want to look at is this idea of rebellion. So we're going to look at Jeremiah 12:8. And it says, "My inheritance has become to me like a lion in the forest. She has lifted up against me her voice. Therefore, I hate her." So if when we go back and look at this in context, my inheritance this is the people Israel. They have lifted up their voice against God like a lion, right? So they have something that they want to protect, and they roar, "This is my territory," or I'm rebelling against you. So this is idea of rebellion, and God dislikes. It says hate here because of it. We see that something else is going on. We see in Ezekiel 22:25 that the conspiracy of the prophets in the midst of her is like a roaring lion and tearing prey. They devour people and they take wealth and treasure and they make its widows numerous in the midst of her. I'm going to change the size of this because it seems kind of small. There we go. Let's change that size. So the prophets are acting like lions in the midst of the people. They're tearing at the people and the widows, and they're destroying Israel from the inside because of the prophets. But it's not just the prophets. We see in Zephaniah 3:3, her officials in the midst are roaring lions. Her judges are evening wolves. They leave nothing until the morning. And so you could go through and read more of that Zephaniah prophecy and Ezekiel and what God is going to be doing. But God calls his people like lions. They're lifting their voice against them, and they're acting as lions towards their own people. So then what does God do? God fosters a lament. And lion is used here as well. So I'm going to read all of Ezekiel 19:1-7. So we'll get in context, but lion is going to be used here. "And you, Ezekiel, raise a lament about the leaders of Israel, prophets and officials. You must say, 'What a lioness was your mother among the lions! She lay down in the midst of young lions, and she reared her lion cubs. And she raised up one from her cubs, and he became a fierce lion. And he learned to tear prey. He ate humans. And nations heard about him. In their pit he was caught, and they brought him with hooks to the land of Egypt. And she saw that she was waiting in vain. Her hope was destroyed. And she took one from her cubs, and she made him a fierce lion. And he walked about in the midst of lions. He became a fierce lion, and he learned to tear prey. He ate humans. And he knew their widows, and he devastated their cities. And the land was appalled, and everyone in it, at the sound of his roar." Okay, so there's something going on here. There's two times. You see how he ate humans twice, and the initial lioness was like the mother that raised the cub and was taken to Egypt. But then we get this idea of another person that comes out and was waiting in vain. And she took one from her cubs and made him a fierce lion. And he walked about in the midst of lions. He learned to tear prey. He was appalled, and everyone, he devastated their cities. This is the line of the tribe of Judah that comes out, because the first one went down to Egypt and was torn apart. Even though he ate humans, he devoured Egypt when he left. But there's another one that's coming, which is who is Messiah, and everyone in it was appalled at the sound of his roar. Now, then what we see is in verse 8, nations set out from the surrounding provinces. They spread their net over him, and he was caught in their pit. And they put him in a collar with hooks, and they brought him to the king of Babylon. They brought him into prison so the voice would not be heard any longer on the mountains of Israel. So they're talking about Israel and how Israel was caught in all these different hooks. And then it goes through and talks about the mother being like a vine in a vineyard. And there's many references to Israel about being the plentiful vineyard. But it goes all the way down and it keeps talking about vineyards. But it says, this is a lament, and it will be used as a lament. It's really interesting when you read through it and you realize God's saying it's a lament. There's something that a lament is something that you are sad about, right? It's like kind of a woe is me. I can't believe all of this happened type of thing. But it's talking about some of the things that happened to Israel. The cubs who got caught to Egypt, another one that got caught to Babylon. And it's a lament that all of these things happened. But there's rebellion. So here is what happens. Now, in his first coming, all right, this idea of lion and Jesus's first coming. Before I get to Jesus's first coming in Psalm 22, I wanted to focus on this judgment on Israel, because this is because of what they say in Hosea. Now, Hosea was written before the exile, it was written before the Babylonian exile. So the question is does this Hosea prophecy relate to the Babylonian exile, or does it relate to 70 AD when Israel was also torn apart? So first we see in Hosea 5:14, look, because I will be like a lion to Ephraim and like a fierce, strong lion to the house of Judah. I myself will tear and I will go. I will carry off, and there is none who delivers. I will return again to my place until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face. In their distress, they will search for me. My suggestion is that this is a picture of Jesus, that he's going to tear his people apart out of their land. And this is a picture of 70 AD. So even though this was written before the exile, I would suggest that this is that a picture of what God's doing because of how Israel treated its people, because how the prophets and the officials, the leaders, the people who were supposed to be shepherding the people, how they were treating them. And then just also the entire nation. Now, there's a second time this is used in Hosea, and this is Hosea 13:7 and 8. And I think this one's probably about Babylon. You see this twice. This used two times. A lot of times, you see things happen twice, and I think it's because there's something near term that's happening, and then something long term or in the future that's happening. And so, Hosea 13:7 and 8 says, "And I will be like a lion to them. I will lie in wait beside the way like a leopard. I will attack them like a bear robbed of her offspring. I will tear open the covering of their heart, and I will devour them like a lion. Like an animal of the field will mutilate them. I will destroy you, O Israel. Who will help you? Now, where is your king that he may save you? Where in all your cities are your judges whom you said, 'Give to me a king and rulers'? I gave you a king in my anger, and I took him away in my wrath. The sin of Ephraim is wrapped up, his sin is concealed. The labor pains of childbirth have come for him, and he is an unwise son, because at the proper time he does not present himself at the mouth of the womb. Shall I redeem them from the power of Sheol? Should I deliver them from death? Where are your plagues, O death? Where is your destruction, O Sheol? Compassion is hidden from my eyes. Although he may flourish among the reeds, the east wind will come and the wind of Jehovah rising from the desert. His fountain will dry up, his spring will be parched. It will be plunder his treasury, every object of desire. Samaria will be guilty because she has rebelled against her God. They will fall by the sword, their children will be dashed to pieces, and their pregnant women will be ripped open. I mean, this lion. So when people act like lions towards the people they're supposed to shepherd, when you have a group that you're supposed to be protecting and you don't, and you tear at them and you rip them apart, God will do the same to you, and He's doing it to Israel. Now, whether that's Babylon, and we could go through, we could go through and really dissect this, or 70 AD, or they refer to both. I think one refers to one, and I think one refers to the other. But it's showing what God does to people who rebel. That's what we're seeing here, and it's specifically being done to Israel. These are specifically tearing Ephraim and Israel. You also see it regards to Samaria. So that's what he's doing to his people. Now we also see something happening to Messiah. And this is in Psalm 22, which is also very interesting. And I'm going to read it from the NASB. So, they open wide their mouth at me as a ravening and roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, it is well melted within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaves to my jaws. And you lay me in the dust of death. For dogs have surrounded me, a hand of evildoers have encompassed me. They pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. They stare at me. They divide my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. This is a picture of what's happening to Messiah at his first coming. Like lions, they're doing all this stuff to him and around him. That's what they're doing. But you, O Lord, be not far off. O you, my help, hasten to my assistance. Deliver my soul from the sword, my only life from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's mouth. From the horns of the wild oxen, you answer me. So it's this picture of what happens to Jesus at the time. So lion is also used of what people did to Messiah, right? So we have this picture of lion, Israel, and the first coming. So what we see in the symbolism. If we were to put this back into our lion symbolism, okay, so we have lion symbolism relating to the Old Testament prophecies. And if we're dealing with Israel, the lion is the coming king in Genesis and Numbers. This is the coming Messiah, king, ruler over Israel. At Messiah's first coming, Jesus, Messiah is torn by lions. But Israel is also torn by God because Israel's officials and prophets and those have torn their own people. They have ravaged their own people. So God is going to do it to them. He tore them in Babylon, and then he also did it in 70 AD. And those two destructions mirror one another, right? They mirror one another in terms of their completeness of the destruction. Israel, Jerusalem being destroyed, the temple being destroyed in both instances. So that's what we see so far in terms of our symbolism. Now, let's go to those that devour. So we've talked about those who devour, and we've talked about the prophets and Israel's officials. Now we have this big, long list of other people who devour. And we're going to run through those really quick because I think it's instructive. Psalm 10:9, we see, he lies in ambush secretly, like a lion in a thicket. He lies in ambush to seize the poor. He seizes the poor by catching him in his net. So it talks about what these people are doing, what the wicked are doing to the poor, and how he compare him to a lion. Psalm 57:4. My soul is among lions. I lie down among those who devour. The children of humankind whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. So again, this imagery of what people do to one another, how they the poor, how they do it to widows, the people that are least able to protect themselves, the lambs, the ones that should be having shepherds, the ones that should be having people be able to rise up and protect them, are actually devouring them. Edom. So we saw Edom was one. I'm not going to cover Edom. Babylon's a big one. So we're going to cover Babylon and how they devour real quick. Jeremiah 50:44. Look, like a lion, he comes up from the thickets of the Jordan against a pasture land by a constantly flowing stream. So I will chase them away quickly from her, and I will point whoever is chosen over her. For who is like me, and who can summon me? Who is this shepherd who can stand before me? Therefore, hear the plan of Yahovah that he has planned against Babylon, and his plans that he has planned against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely they will drag them away, the little ones of the flock. Surely he will cause their grazing place to be desolate over them. At the sound, Babylon has been captured. The earth will quake, and a cry for help among the nations will be heard. Babylon's going to be judged for pulling off and pulling people away. We see it also in Jeremiah 51:38. They will roar together like young lions. They will growl like the cubs of lions. At their becoming hot, I will set their banquets, and I will make them drunk, so they will fall into a swoon, and they will sleep an everlasting sleep, and they will not wake up, declares Jehovah. I will bring them down like young rams to the slaughter, like rams and goats. How Shishak is captured, how the glory of all the earth is seized, how Babylon has become an object of horror. So again, it's this picture of what they've done and what's going to happen to them because of what they've done as acting as lions. We see the same thing with Egypt. Son of man, raise a lament over Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. You must say to them, with a fierce, strong lying among nations, you compared yourself. You are like the sea monster in the seas. You thrash about in your rivers. You make water turbid with your feet, and you make rivers muddy. But thus says Lord Jehovah, I will spread my net over you in the assemblies of many people. So he's going to tell them what he's going to do to Egypt. So Egypt had compared themselves to lions, that they could go around and thrash among the nations. People want to say that they're powerful and strong, but God is the one who's the ultimate power. Now, we also see this regarding just many nations, and we're going to look at this one a little bit more when we look at Jeremiah. 25. We're not going to look at that just this moment. I want to look at these last four. These are actually in the New Testament. What kind of? The first beast is in Daniel 7, 3, and 4. And we get, and four great beasts were coming up from the sea, differing from one another. The first was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I was watching as its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted from the earth, and it was raised on its feet like a human, and a human heart was given to it. Okay, so we get one of these beasts that was like a lion. We see something similar in Revelation 13:2. And the beast that I saw coming out of the sea was similar to a leopard, and its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like the mouth of a lion. Okay, so again, this image of beast coming out of the sea, okay, that's coming to devour. We see that the devil is compared to a lion. Be sober, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Stay steadfast in your faith. Resist him. It's hard. It's a challenge sometimes, but we have to resist that temptation. It's hard to resist that. It's a challenge. Every battle is a victory, and we're going to lose many battles, but keep pressing forward. Keep trying to do right, to be righteous, to protect those that need protecting, because the devil's trying to tear us down. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to tear us down so that we don't rise up, that he rips off a leg or an arm or an eye, and you're just like, oh, I'm beaten. I can't do this. I can't win over this. Don't resist, fight, rise up, not in your own strength, not in your own power, but in the power of God. Remember when they were contending for the body of Moses, Michael said, "The Lord rebuke you." That's the power that we have. We can't do those things on our own. We need to be standing in the power of God in Christ. All right. So, locusts from the abyss, Revelation 9:8. And they had hair like the hair of women, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. So, again, this idea of people who come and tear and rip and destroy, they're frequently compared to lions. You can also see the bears and the leopards, but these animals, these ferocious beasts that tear at things. We see it in Revelation 9:17. We see it in the troops of the sixth trumpet. And in this way, I saw the horses in a vision, and those who seated on them, and they had fire. Who were fiery red, sulfurous yellow breastplates, and heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire and smoke and sulfur. So these horses had heads like lions. Again, they're coming to devour. So we see all of these groups that are devouring and trying to devour people. They're trying to devour other nations, individuals, and we stand up in the power of God to resist. Now, Israel was also then torn by others. So Israel was torn by lions. Now we see this, that he was allowed by God. So we've already seen this for the transgressions, but it's also done by other nations that's sometimes allowed by God. The one we're going to look at is Jeremiah 50:17 through 20. There's a few other references, but we're going to look at this one primarily. Israel is a sheep scattered. Lions drove them away. The first to devour it was the king of Assyria. And now at the end, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, gnawed its bones. Remember, people had done things, the officials, and God called lions to come and get them. But the people, the nations who came to do these things are also subject to their own judgments of how they treated people, right? Let us use America as an example. During World War II, when they defeated Germany, and Japan, how did they treat those nations once they were defeated? Did they completely overrun them, take them over, wipe their people out, take them into captivity? No. They stayed, they helped rebuild. They helped them to become better, stronger nations, even though that they were defeated. They held the leaders responsible. But that's not what Assyria and Babylon did they? They displaced the people. They took them out. Therefore, thus says Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel. Look, I'm going to punish the king of Babylon. We've seen this already. And his land, just as I punished the king of Assyria. And I will restore Israel to its pasture. And it will feed on Carmel and in Bashan. And on the hills of Ephraim and in Gilead, its hunger will be satisfied. In those days and at that time, declares Jehovah, the guilt of Israel will be sought, but there is none. Wait a second. In that day, in those days and at that time, the guilt of Israel will be sought, but there will be none. That seems okay. So their guilt is gone now? Yeah, after God punished and chastised them, that was the punishment for what they had done. And the sins of Judah, but they will not be found, for I will forgive those I left behind. They received a punishment, they received something, but God forgave them, and he's going to restore them. That's Israel being torn. Now, there's one, so people want to be called to be saved from lions. I just want to show one of that. So there's a whole bunch of ones of, there we go. There we go. That when people recognize that there are lions around them, right? We can do a couple of different things when we recognize lions around us, these temptations, these people that are tearing at us and trying to tear us down. As individuals, we can cry out to God, or we can take matters into our own hands. We can try to do something, fight with them, stand up, those type of things. Well, if God is telling us to do that, but are we crying out to God? Are we asking to do it in God's power? Do we ask God to intervene for the nation and for us individually? Let's look at Psalm 83:2. I'll slide up just a bit. We'll start in 1. O God, do not rest. Do not keep silent or be still, O God. For look, your enemies roar, and those who hate you have lifted their head. Right? What does a lion do? So they have a prey. The prey is on the ground, and they're eating the prey, and they're something like that. And somebody else comes up and approaches them, and they lift their head and they roar. They're trying to scare them away. They're trying to keep them far away, and they lift their head and roar. They devise cunning schemes against your people, and they consult together against your protected ones. They say, come, let us annihilate them from being a nation, so that the name of Israel will be remembered no more. They're doing more than just, being a chastisement for God. They're actually trying to destroy them as a nation, even though God doesn't want that. He wants them to be chastised. But the people, these lions that are coming against him, are actually trying to destroy them as a people. For they have consulted together with a unified purpose. They have made a covenant against you. And then we'll go through and you can read the rest of Psalm 83, which is very instructive of some of the things that many people think are going to happen soon, or are going to be something that happens with all these nations bind together, these 10 nations of the beast, of that larger beast in Revelation, gather together against Israel. So people cry out. They cry out to God. Now, this is not, even though I've kind of related to things that are going on in our lives, this is, if you see the way that the solution is solved is by God intervening. I'm not bringing in scripture verses of us being lions. We don't go out there and act as lions against all these other people that are acting as lions towards us. You don't see those scripture verses there. You don't see lion being used in that way. So we also need to be very careful in terms of how. So I don't want people to get the impression that I'm telling that that's what we're supposed to be doing, because if we look at the scripture verses, we really don't see that. We see in the Psalms, there's multiple ones. So let me just show David, one of David's, real quick before I do that. Um, so this is David here. He's like, look at, oh Yahovah, my God, in you I have taken refuge. Save me from all who pursue me and deliver me, or else he will tear me apart like a lion, ripping to pieces with none. Oh Yahovah, my God, if I repaid my ally with harm, or the enemy of my soul pursue, around and lay my honor in the dust in your anger, and lift yourself up against the wrath of my oppressors and awake from for me. So David, even though David is king, we see these over and over. There's multiple psalms where David is asking God to rise up and be the one who protects him. That God is the one that's going to roar like the lion, not David. Okay. Still have quite a few, so we're going to go through that. Now, what happens? How does God respond to devouring lions? So, God, Jehovah, rises in judgment. But the first thing we need to recognize is this voice of God. So, let's look at 3 scripture verses of how that's used. The first one's in Job 37:4. After it, his voice roars. It thunders with his majestic voice, and he does not restrain it when his voice is heard. Now, this idea of God thunders with his voice in marvelous ways, there's nothing that really calls it a lion. So his voice roars. It could be the roar of a sea or roar of the thunders. So this use of roar is a separate use with no lion attached to it. So we could say, well, that's not really God's voice. That roar is probably a sea or a thunder. Well, that could be. I wanted to bring it up because of roar and how God's voice sounds. But we do have a couple others. So let's take a look at Amos 1:2. And he said, Jehovah roars from Zion. He utters his voice from Jerusalem. The pastures of the shepherds wither, and the top of Carmel dries up. So once again, we get this that God roars from Zion, but we don't get lion attached to this one either. However, the pastures of the shepherds wither. This idea of shepherds, remember, these are the people that are supposed to be watching over others. And so we get this idea of roar and shepherds, whereas the other one, we got roar with thunder. So we could make a situation where the other one was probably more seas, thunders, that type of roar. But this one, being associated with shepherds, makes us think that it may be more like a lion's type of roar. We also have more support for that, as in Amos 3:8. A lion has roared. Who is not afraid? My Lord Yahovah has spoken. Who will not prophesy? Proclaim to the citadel fortresses in Ashdod and the citadel fortresses in the land of Egypt and say, gather on the mountains of Samaria and see the great panic in her midst and the oppression in her midst. So this one is a lion has roared. And if you go back up here just a bit, we see that surely my Lord does not do anything unless he has revealed his secret to his servants, the prophets. A lion is roared. Who is not afraid? My Lord Yahovah has spoken. Who will not prophesy? So Yahovah has spoken, a lion has roared. Who cannot prophesy? So it's this idea here that lion is associated with roar. God's voice of speaking is associated with this roar as well, as a roar of a lion. So God's voice roars in many different ways. But so I think Amos is showing that there's this lion that's associated with God's voice. Now, when God rises in judgment, we've already seen that Israel was judged by them. But we're also going to see that Israel is going to be protected by them. But we're going to look at that one next. For right now, we're going to look at the wicked, the nations, and how it relates a little bit to the day of the Lord. So we're going to look at this for the side of the wicked. All right. First, let's look at Psalm 91:13. You will tread on lion and viper. You will trample young lion and serpent. Okay, so who is trampling and what's going on? All right. So this is really interesting. Verse 8, we're going to start with. You will only look with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. For you, O Jehovah, are my refuge. You have made the Most High your dwelling place. No harm will befall you. No plague will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to watch over you in all your ways. This sounds familiar if you remember the temptation of Satan to Jesus in the desert and the wilderness. In their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and viper. You will trample young lion and serpent. Because he loves me, therefore I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. He will call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble and I will rescue and honor. So this is a picture of God, of the two Godheads talking, of God the Father talking to the Son. I think if you go back and look at this from all the beginning, um, one who lives in the secret place of the Most High will lodge in the shadow of Shaddai. I will say to Yehovah, you are my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and the plague of destruction. With his feathers he will cover you, and under his wings you can take refuge. So it's this idea of this big bird protecting. You will need not fear the terror of the night or the arrow that flies by day. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. For you, O Jehovah, are my refuge. You, O Jehovah, have made the Most High your dwelling place. No harm will befall you. So it's just really interesting, this language. And some people are going to say, no, it's an application to everybody. But what we see is that the wicked get trampled upon, whether that's God or whether that's Israel. Somebody is getting trampled when God rises up, right? That's the ultimate takeaway that I want. You will tread on the lion and viper. You will trample young lion and serpent. It's in the power, but remember, this is in the power of God. This isn't in their own power. So ultimately, God is the one who is allowing for punishment of the wicked. Okay. Now, going back here, the nations. Now, this is where I want to get into Jeremiah 25. Now, Jeremiah 25 is a little bit of a long passage. And to understand the context, we're going to spend a little bit of time. But before we do, we're going to look at the two references to lion, and then we're going to go back and look at it in context. Because there's something really important going on here. So Jeremiah 25:30. Let's get it over there. And you yourself shall prophesy against them all of these words. You shall say to them, Yahovah will roar from on high, and from his holy dwelling place he will give his voice. He will roar mightily against his settlement, a jubilant shout like those who tread grapes. He will answer against all the inhabitants of the earth. This is just a complete picture of what's going on in Revelation 10, because God is coming down from his holy place. He's roaring from on high, and he's going out to tread the grapes. If you look at Revelation 14, the people they do the harvest, and the grapes get poured into the winepress of God's wrath against all the earth. So there's this picture here of what God's doing when he comes down. He's roaring, just like this powerful angel that's coming down from heaven. He's coming down from heaven and he's roaring. And I would say that this is a picture of Messiah. Now, we also see some lion used here in Jeremiah 25:38. He has left his den like a lion, for their land has become a horror because of the anger of the oppressors and because of his burning anger. So God is coming out of his place. He's angry at the people that are oppressing and his burning anger. Okay, so what is this in context? So now to understand this in context, we're going to go all the way back up to the beginning of Jeremiah 25. Now, I'm going to make this larger again. I swear it like shrinks on me. Okay. Now, this is what Jeremiah is saying concerning the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah. It was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. So Jeremiah is getting ready to make this prophecy. He's getting ready to speak. And what do we find out? He spoke to the people of Judah and the inhabitants, saying, look, from the 13th year of Josiah, the son of Amon, king of Judah, even to this day, 23 years, the word of Jehovah has come to me, and I have spoken to you over and over again, but you have not listened. You're not hearing me. 23 years I've been speaking to these people. Jehovah has sent his servants, the prophets, to you over and over, but you've not listened. You have not inclined your ear. Turn back, please, each from his evil ways. Your deeds are evil. He's telling them, look, if you don't turn back, Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon's going to come and take you away, which we know happened. And we saw the other prophecies that have gone on from Hosea and these other people. Israel is going to be judged because of what they've been doing. Okay? You must not go after other gods. You must stop our worship. Yet you have not listened to me, declares Jehovah. So you've provoked me to anger with the work of your hands from your own harm. Therefore, this is what Jehovah is going to say. Look, because you've not obeyed my words, I'm going to send and take all the clans of the north. And I will send Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. So he's telling him now, boom, look, Babylon's coming. It's done. 23 years. I've tried to tell you. Jeremiah's done it. Multiple prophets. He's coming. The king of Babylon is coming. And against it, and I will destroy them. I will make them a horror and everlasting movements. I will exterminate them from the sound of jubilation, the sound of joy, the sound of the bride, the voice of the bridegroom and the bride. He's telling you all this joy is going to be gone. Many nations and great kings will let them work, even them, and I will pay them according to their deeds. Look, for thus says Jehovah, the God of Israel, to me. Now, this is where the transition occurs. This is where something else happens. So he's calling Babylon. Babylon's going to come take Israel. But this is where it flips. The script flips here, and he's going to be talking to the nations and Babylon. Look, take this cup of the wine of the wrath from my hand. Cup, wine, wrath. This is like the bowls in Revelation, this idea of wrath and bowls and cup. You must give it to all the nations to whom I'm sending you to drink. You're going to give it to all the nations, Jeremiah, that I'm sending you. They will drink the cup of my wrath. Who are these nations? Who is he going to send Jeremiah to? Look, they will drink. They will stagger and they will act like madmen because of the presence of the sword that I am sending among them. There's going to be war. There's going to be battles. Jeremiah, took the cup from the hand of Yahweh and gave it to all the nations to whom Yahweh sent me to drink. What are these nations? He sent them to all the nations. Which ones? Jerusalem, the towns of Judah, and its kings, its officials, to make them a sight of ruin and horror and object of hissing, and it curses at this day. Okay, we kind of knew that. He already told him that. But he also sent it to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and his servants and his officials and all his people. And he also sent it to the kings of the land of Uz and all the kings of the lands of the Philistines. Okay. He sent it to Ashkelon and Gaza and Ekron and Ashdod, Edom, Moab, the Ammonites, and all the kings of Tyre, all the kings of Sidon, the kings of the coastland and across the sea, Dedan and Tema and Buz and all those who trim by the side, and all the kings of Arabia, the kings of the other people who dwell in the desert, the kings of Zimri and all the kings of Elam, all the kings of Media, and the kings of the north and near and far, each one his brother, and all the kingdoms of the world that are on the face of the earth, and king of Shishak, he will drink after them. Boom. He sent it to all the kingdoms of the world that are on the face of the earth. This cup is going to. Did Jeremiah literally go to all these people? No. But the cup that they're going to drink is being sent to every nation. Did that happen? This is more than just what happened to Babylon. Remember, we saw those prophecies of Babylon being judged, but he just listed all these nations and it just started expanding. Arabia and Egypt in the north, and then he just said, all the earth, all the kings of the earth, everyone. And here's what you're going to say to them. So they're going to take the cup of wrath. And this is what you're going to say to them in verse 27. Thus says Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel, drink and become drunk and vomit and fall, and you must not rise because of the presence of the sword that I am sending among you. And it will happen if they refuse to take the cup from your hand to drink, then you shall say to them, thus says Jehovah of hosts, you must certainly drink. For look, on a city that is called by my name, I am beginning to inflict harm. And you indeed, will you go unpunished? Look, he's saying, look, I'm bringing this to Israel. They're called by my name. And I'm bringing judgment upon them because of what they've done. Do you think you're going to escape? These people are called by my name, and I make them, and I'm going to judge them. You're not going to escape. You will not go unpunished, for I am summoning a sword against all the inhabitants of the earth. This is a picture now switched over to this end times picture of what's going on in the bowls of wrath and the 7 bowls of judgment, the 7 bowls of wrath in Revelation, where there's war and all these battles. Look, and you yourself shall prophesy against them all these words, and you shall say to them, Jehovah will roar on high, and from his holy dwelling place he will give voice. Just after he's telling them that the sword is going to come upon them, that they're all going to have to drink this wrath, this cup of the wine of wrath, he tells them that God is going to roar from on high, and he's going to, from his holy dwelling place, and he will give voice. It's a picture of what's happening in Revelation 10. He will roar mightily against his settlement, a jubilant shout like those who dread grapes. He will answer against all the inhabitants of the earth. The rage of battle will resound to the end of the earth, for there is a lawsuit of Jehovah against the nations. He's going to judge the nations. He says, look, you guys are guilty. I've not left my people unpunished. You've not been punished for all of these things that you've built up over the centuries. I have a lawsuit against you. He's entering into judgment with all wicked flesh. He will give them to the sword. Go read the end of Revelation 18, 17, 18. What's going on there with Babylon being judged, all these nations being judged. Thus says Jehovah of hosts, Look, disaster is going out from nation to nation. A great tempest is stirred up from the farthest parts of the earth. And the slain ones of Yahweh will be on that day from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, and they will not be mourned. And they will not be gathered, and they will not be buried. They will become like dung on the surface of the ground. And you see this kind of repeated in Zechariah, where it talks about that they won't be buried and they'll be burning them for months. Wail, you shepherds, and cry out, and roll about in the morning on the dust, O leaders of the flock. For your days of slaughter and your days of dispersion have arrived, and you will fall like vessels of desire. And the flight will perish from the shepherds and escape the leaders of the flock. So all these people that are leading the people, the sound and the cry of distress from the shepherds and the wailing of the leaders of the flock, for Yahovah is despoiling their pasture. All these people that are leading nations are leading groups of people that aren't actually taking care of them. And the peaceful settlements are devastated because of the burning anger of Jehovah. He has left his den like a lion. For their land has become a horror because of the anger of the oppressors and because of his burning anger. This is a picture. So what we see is he's using this example of what's happening to Israel, and he's prosecuting the other nations. Babylon was already judged way back when, but he's also tying these nations into Babylon in the future of all the earth, of everybody. Now, this also ties to this day of the Lord language. And at one point, I'm going to do a day of the Lord study. Oops, excuse me. The day of the Lord study is multiple weeks. I can't do it in an hour and a half or even 2 hours. It's going to be multiple weeks, especially because so many people. I think a lot of people have gotten it wrong, but anyways, it's going to be multiple weeks. Takes time. But let's look at how it's related when we use it in relation to lion. Amos 5:19. It will be as if a man fled from a lion and a bear met him, and he went into the house and leaned his hand against the wall, and a snake bit him. Is not the day of Yahovah darkness and not light, and pitch dark with no brightness in it? So he's just letting them know. Remember when I said that that the actual use of lion. So this is not like a lion. It's like a man fled from a lion, like an actual real lion, and a bear met him. So this is an actual animal, but it's used in prophetic terms, and it's related to the day of the Lord. We see something in Nahum 2:11-13. Where now is the den of lions and the cave of the fierce lions? There the lioness, the cub, and the lion once prowled, and no one disturbed them. The lion tore apart enough prey for his cubs. He strangled prey for his lioness. He has filled his lair with prey and his den with mangled carcass. Look. Yep. Look, I am against you, declares Yahovah of hosts. I am against you. I will burn her chariots with fire. The sword will devour her fierce lions. I will cut off your prey from the earth. The voice of your messengers will no longer be heard. These people gathered innocent lambs and led them into their areas of slaughter and ate their carcasses. He's giving this picture of what these people are doing to innocent, to widows, to the poor. Who is it? Well, let's go back up. Nineveh is like a pool of water without its water. As they flee, she cries, "Stop, stop," but there's no one who turns back. Plunder the silver, plunder the gold. There's no end to the spoils, the abundance of everything one could want. emptiness and plundering, devastation. Their hearts faint and their knees tremble. All their loins shake and all their faces turn pale. Now, where is the den of the lions and the den of the fierce lions? So, what we're relating to is we're relating to Nineveh. Nineveh is in Assyria. And what they're saying is they're being overrun, they're being taken over, and they're taking all the spoils, and they're like, where's their den now? Where is it? And this Nahum one is really good. If you go back through of what's happening, and when we really go dive into this, the day of the Lord, and these battles that are going to happen, we'll get into this more. But in this one, Nahum, Nineveh uh, acts like these lions that are tearing and at their people and at other people, and they're like, "Where are you anymore? You're going to be despoiled. You're going to be run over, and everything that you have is going to be taken away." Isaiah 5:29 and 30. His roaring is like the lion, and he roars like young lions. And he growls and seizes his prey, and he carries it off, and not one can rescue it. And he will roar over him on that day like a roaring of the sea. And if one looks to the land, look, darkness, distress, and the light grows dark with its clouds. Day of the Lord language right here. And you can see how this roaring of the lion is also like the roaring of the sea. He's going to roar over him on that day. Who is he going to roar over? He's going to roar over Israel. He's coming to protect his people. So if you go back through and again read it in context, you'll see that he's roaring over Israel. God is coming to protect his people. Now, we also see this with regards to the nations. A sound, a noise is on the mountains, a likeness of many people, a sound of the roar of kingdoms, of nations gathering. Yahovah is mustering an army for battle. They are coming from a distant land with weapons of wail, for the day of the Yahovah is near. This idea of roar, loud sounds. Now, this one's not completely tied to a lion, but again, it's this idea of roaring, loud sounds. Isaiah 17:12. Ah, the noise of many peoples. They make a noise like the noise of the sea. The roar of the nations, they roar like the roar of mighty waters. So what that suggests is that Isaiah 13:4 is also tying it to waters and roaring. But remember what we had. Remember what we had here. What was that? Yeah, there we go. In Isaiah 5:29, the roaring of the lion is tied to the roaring of the sea. So he's letting them know that these people, these nations are roaring like the sea. The sea is this idea of Gentiles and things like that, but it's really just kind of this loud sound. But God is going to roar like a lion, and he's going to roar over him on that day like the roaring of the sea. So these nations roar like the sea, but God is going to roar like a lion, something stronger, strong and powerful. So Micah 5:8 and 9. And the remnant of Jacob will be among the nations, in the midst of many people, like a lion among the wild animals of the forest, like a young lion among the herds of sheep, which, when it passes through and treads down and tears into pieces, there's none who can deliver. Wait a second. The remnant of Jacob, okay? Remember what's been happening. Israel has been getting torn and devoured and everything like that. But we find that the remnant of Jacob will be among the nations. So Jacob, Israel is going to be among the nations this time. And they're going to be in the midst of many people, like a lion among the wild animals of the forest, like a young lion among the herds of sheep. So Israel is going to be like a lion this time. which when it passes through, it treads down and tears to pieces, and there's no one can deliver it. Your hand will be lifted high over your enemies, and your foes will be cut off. And it will happen in that day, declares Jehovah. Then I will cut off your horses from among you, and I will destroy your chariots, and I will cut off the cities of your land, and I will demolish your fortifications, and I will cut off sorceries from your land, and you will not have soothsayers, and I'll cut off your idols and your stone pillars, and you will no longer bow down to the works of your hand. You will no longer uproot your Asherahs among you, and I will destroy your cities. And in anger and in wrath, I will execute vengeance on nations who did not obey. So God is going to come through, and he's going to uproot all of these. I will cut off your horses from among you and destroy your chariots. He's going to cut off all these soothsayers. So what you're seeing is this end times battle. When God roars from heaven, when he comes down, there's going to be a time period where God comes against people and nations. Israel is going to be participating in some of that. And these nations are going to be destroyed and cut off. And we begin to see that again in Revelation 10. That God is going to come and devour other nations as he gathers Israel and as he exalts Israel. Now, tied into Messiah's second coming. So what we see here is that there's going to be two things where we've already looked at Jeremiah 25. Joel 3 is really big, and we're going to take a quick look at that, and Isaiah 31. Isaiah 31:4. We're going to talk about lion, but we'll read this in context, so we're going to go all the way back up to verse 1. Those who go down to Egypt for help, they rely on horses, and they trust in chariots because they were many, and in horsemen because they are very numerous, and they do not look the Holy One of Israel, and they do not consult Yahovah. And indeed, he is wise and he brings disaster, and he does not remove his words. Once God makes a promise, he does not remove his words. And he will rise against the house of evildoers and against the help of workers of iniquity. So the people who did evil, people who did wicked, God's going to rise against them. And the Egyptians are human and not God. So people were going to look for Egypt for help. And their horses are flesh and not spirit. Yahovah stretches out his hands, and the helper will stumble. The one being helped will fall, and together all of them will come to an end. For Yahovah said this to me, as which a lion growls and a young lion over its prey. When a full group of shepherds is called against him, is it not terrified by their voice? And to their noise does it not respond? So what he's saying is, look, when there's a lion, right? Okay, when a lion growls and a young lion's over his prey. So a lion's there. Remember we talked about the lion sitting over its prey. And somebody comes towards it, it growls. So these shepherds, this full group of shepherds is called against the lion. And the lion has its prey and it growls. Is not terrified by the voice and to the noise, does it not respond? So when the shepherds come against the lion to get this prey or to get whatever, it's terrified by their voice, by the shepherd's voice. So Yehovah of hosts will come down to fight upon Mount Zion and upon its hill. So God is saying, look, I'm coming down to fight against these people. The lions that are holding on, remember the ones that were in like Nineveh, Assyria, that are holding on to their prey. When the shepherds come against them, the lions growl more, but the lion's afraid of all the shepherds. So too, they're going to be afraid when God comes down from his holy mountain. And it says, The birds, like the birds flying overhead, so Jehovah of hosts will protect Jerusalem. When God comes down, he's going to protect Jerusalem. He will protect it and deliver it. People are going to be gnawing on Israel and Jerusalem when God comes down, and it's going to come down as a shepherd. They're going to be afraid, and God's now going to protect Israel and Jerusalem. He will pass over it and rescue it. Turn back to the one against whom the sons of Israel have made up the deep rebellion. For on that day, each one will reject his idols of silver and gold, which made sin for you. And Assyria shall fall by the sword, not of a man. They'll fall by a sword, not a man. And a sword not of human shall devour him. So a sword that's not of human shall devour Assyria, and he shall flee from it. Right? Remember way back when, where it said that they looked to Egypt, right? And he brings disaster. But look, the Egyptians are human and not spirit. Their horses are flesh and not spirit. They're human and not God. And so he's juxtaposing, he's showing this picture down at the end. When they fall, they're not going to fall by the sword of a man. They're going to fall by God. They're going to fall by spirit. They can't fight against it. They can't even fight against it. And Israel is trying to get a hold of people to help it that are human, but what they need is they need God. And God's going to come down, and he is going to protect his people. This is what we're seeing when he returns. Now we see this also in Joel 3:16. And Yahovah roars from Zion, and from Jerusalem he utters his voice, and the heavens and the earth shake. But Yahovah is a refuge for his people and a protection for the children of Israel. God is going to come from Zion. He's going to utter his voice from Jerusalem, and he's going to protect his people. So this is what we're going to see. So remember, there's two sides. They're coming down to judge all the nations, but he's also coming down to protect Israel. Now we see this also in Hosea, and we're going to read it, just the two verses first, 10 and 11, but then we're going to go back and read a little bit more in context. They will go after Yahovah. He roars like a lion. When he roars, his children will come trembling from the sea. So when God roars, when he comes down and he roars like a lion to claim his kingship, that's what he's doing for Israel. He's coming to claim his kingship. The children will come trembling from the sea. And the sea is this idea of nations, Gentile nations. They will tremble like birds from Egypt and like doves from the land of Assyria. And I will let them return to their homes, a declaration of Yahovah. So this is what's happening. So the people are getting gnawed by all these lions of Jerusalem. They're trying to find help, but they're asking for help of Egypt and men rather than asking for help from God. But God's going to come down. He's going to roar he's like a shepherd that's going to scare away the lions that are devouring Israel, and he's going to protect them, and he's going to guide them, and he's going to bring them back, and he's going to let them return to their homes. Now, yeah, I'm gonna call that one. All right. So this is the picture that we're getting. We're getting this picture that God's going to come down on Mount Zion from heaven, protect, deliver, and rescue Jerusalem, but he's not coming in wrath to Israel. The people are going to return to Jehovah from the sea, from the nations. There's going to be war that's going on, and it's also tied to the day of the Lord, to this judgment idea, and Israel's going to return to their homes. The surrounding nations are going to have to drink the cup of the wine of the wrath of God. There's going to be sword among them. There's going to be a lawsuit and judgment. So this is what we're going to be seeing, and they're going to be going through this winepress of the wrath of God in Revelation 14. So you see how lion is tying into so much more than just the lion of the tribe. There's so much more what the lion of the tribe of Judah is going to be doing. So if we go in and look at the lion symbolism in the second coming, he's going to protect his people and they will return to the land and to their God. The nations who have been tearing everyone, especially Israel, now they will be torn by Jehovah, the Lion of Judah, on the day or the time of the Lord. And they're going to be torn by not by man, but by God and the Spirit that's going forth. Now, what's the result? What's the result of all this? What's the outcome? What's going to happen after all of this? And what we see is, what is the purpose? There's going to be some type of peace. God is trying to institute peace. And we even see this with lions. And so this is not an exhaustive study for this, but if you go through and you read each of these passages in regards to peace, Isaiah 11, 6 and 7. And the wolf shall stay with a lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and a calf and a lion and a fatling together as a small boy leads them. And a cow and a bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and a lion shall eat straw like cattle. An infant will play over a serpent's hole, and a toddler put his hand in a viper's den. Right? So if you read all of this in context, you find that they're talking about this kingdom, this kingdom that God's going to introduce. Remember, Messiah, Jesus, is coming down as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, who's going to come and claim kingship. And he's going to rule, and he's going to create peace on the holy mountain. There's more than that. Isaiah 35, 9. No lion shall be there, no ferocious wild beast shall go up upon it. It shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. Now, this is, people are like, well, is there going to be a lion or is there not going to be a lion? Well, this is a different thing. The previous one was talking about the holy mountain. This is talking about a highway. If you go back up, a highway shall be there, and it shall be called the way of holiness. And people are going to be able to walk on this highway across different areas from Assyria to Egypt and all these things. And what they're trying to convey is that there's not going to be a lion that's going to be there that's going to be tearing. They're going to be safe, being able to walk in the wilderness, to be able to walk from place to place. It's going to be a place of safety. There's not going to be a lion on that highway. And on the holy mountain, there's going to be peace. Isaiah 65, 25. And the wolf and the lamb shall feed like one, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. But the dust shall be the serpent's food. They shall do no evil, and they shall not destroy on all my holy mountain. So, and if you go back and read all of, again, Isaiah 65, you'll find that this is talking about this kingdom, this place that Messiah is going to rule, which we call the millennial kingdom, which we see in Revelation 20. So what you see is that this picture in Revelation 10 that Jesus comes down. And then this stuff happens in 10, 11, and 13. And then in 14, you see that they prepare for the bowls of wrath that God is going to pour out. And they're poured into the winepress of God's wrath. And then you get the bowls of wrath, and you get the judgment of the people, and you get the judgment of the beast. And the outcome is the millennial kingdom and peace. It all lays out orderly as what we see in Revelation. So we get this peace in this millennial kingdom and on the holy mountain. We also see something else, which is really interesting. We get a temple language in Ezekiel 41:19. I just find this really interesting. And the face of a human was, let me go up one verse. Um, no, I'll start in 17. Above the doorway, so this is a temple, and up to the inner temple and on the outside, and on all of the wall, all the way around, and the inner and outer areas were patterns. And it was made of cherubim and palm tree images. So there's a cherubim and palm tree images in this pattern all around. And the palm tree image between cherub, and the cherub had two faces. So the picture, there's a cherub, a palm tree, a cherub, a palm tree, a cherub, a palm tree. They're alternating. And the face of a human was toward, and the face of a human was toward the palm tree image on one side, and the face of a fierce, strong lion faced the palm tree image on the other side. This work was executed for the entire temple all the way around. So you get this cherubim, and one picture of the cherubim has a face of a human, and the on the other side of the cherubim, so there's one cherubim, it's the face of a lion, and they face the palm tree on each side. Do you see the symbolism here of the cherubim, the lion, the palm tree, the palm branches that Messiah had put down, but when he walked in, I mean, I haven't even looked at this. When this hit me, I haven't even studied this. There's so much symbolism here, um, of what this may be portraying or foreshadowing or telling about people about the temple. Um, but it's completely fascinating to me, completely fascinating. But I just wanted to make sure I brought that up. That's another place that lion is there. So is this a living creature that's in the temple? Maybe. Or is this the picture of the role of Jesus, human, angel, and lion, that is facing the piece of the palm tree? Everything to me is about Christ. I think it's this picture here. Yes. Do the living creatures have a face of a human and a face of a lion, and it could be them? Yeah, and they're called a cherubim? Sure, absolutely. But he's also the angel of the Lord. He's also a lion. He has a human. I don't know. I think it's a picture of what Jesus has done, but we'd have to go through that. I haven't studied it. That's just speculation. Okay, we're getting close to the end. Now, so we finished up. Now let's look back at how Revelation 10 symbolism relates to these Old Testament prophecies. So the rainbow is a Noahic prophecy or Noahic covenant, and it relates to the appearance of God in Ezekiel, but it also relates to judgment of the nations. The cloud is related to the Mosaic covenant for Israel in the Exodus, but the cloud is also related to the judgment of the people on the day of clouds or the day of the Lord. The lion is a symbol of the Davidic covenant, and it's related to, for Israel, the coming king who will protect Israel and restore them in the Davidic kingdom or the millennial kingdom. But the lion is also for judgment that will tear the nations. So do you see how each of these covenants for the nations relates to judgment, and each of the covenants in relationship to Israel points to something about God and what Jesus and the Son of Man is doing. And so I remember how I told you we would be looking at 2 Samuel 7. So this is 2 Samuel 7, the Davidic covenant. And I've done study on the kingdom of God. You can go back and look at the kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, talking about the Davidic covenant and how that plays a role in what our kingdom looks like today and what the millennial kingdom and the eternal kingdom looks like in regards to the Holy Spirit. But I don't want to get too far ahead. Let's look at 2 Samuel 7, 10 through 13. So Samuel is coming to tell David something. It tells him this covenant. I, Yahovah, will make a place for my people Israel, and I will plant them so that they can dwell in their own place, and they will not tremble any longer, and the children of wickedness will not afflict them again as in the former days. Do you see what this is all leading up to? And in that manner that I appointed judges over my people Israel. So he's appointed judges over them. I will give you rest from all your enemies. And Yahovah declares to you that Yahovah will build a house for you. When your days are full and you lie down with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring after you, who will go out from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. So, when that prophecy in Genesis 49, talking about the coming king, when it got time to the Davidic covenant and we actually had a king, Samuel then gave a prophecy pointing to a yet future king that was going to come from his body that would then be king. Some want to say that that was Solomon, but if you look at the context here and what's happening, I will establish his kingdom. He will build a house for my name. Okay. So Solomon did build a house for his name. I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. That did not happen. This is another picture pointing towards Messiah, towards Jesus, towards Christ. This is the Davidic kingdom where Messiah will rule, and it will be a place of peace, and their enemies won't afflict them anymore because the enemies have been judged. It's a picture of the Lion of the tribe of Judah fulfilling the Davidic covenant and the promise of the coming king who will protect Israel and restore Israel in that millennial kingdom. That's what the Lion's going to be doing. That's that twofold that we talk about, right? That the Lion is going to come and protect Israel. It's going to lead Israel, but he's also going to judge the nations, tear the nations. We see this in Revelation 10. We see these all tied together. God is tying them all together, and Jesus is going to come back, and that's where he is coming. That is that moment. He's coming right around the 6th, 7th trumpet time period. Now, what does that mean in terms of time, years? That's another study. That's speculation. We can get into this, but it is this picture, it is this promise, so that when we look at Revelation 10, we also see that, look, when his feet were like the pillars of fire, which we haven't covered, he held in his hand the little scroll, but he put his foot on the sea, his right foot on the sea, and his left foot on the land. He touched down. He came back and he touched the ground. He is back on earth. He's not just hovering up in the air. He's back. So why is this important? Why do I belabor this? Because it's laid out in the Old Testament what's going to happen, but it was never put into a chronological type of order. It was tough to tell when things were going to happen. And Revelation, if you look at the last series that I just did, where I tied in the chronologies together, they're laying out how things are going to transpire. And people are going to miss it. We talked about in our Bible study, the end times don't matter until it does. It hasn't mattered really for the last 1900 years, last 2000 years, because it didn't matter, because you died before Christ came back. But when it matters, when it happens, it's going to matter. And the question is Are we in that generation? Is that a future generation? Is that 100 years from now? That's what we're trying to determine. But the first thing we need to determine is what it's going to look like, what its structure is going to be, what's going to happen, so that we can be prepared, so that we recognize Jesus. So we recognize Messiah. That is it. That is the goal. We need to know our Savior. And if we don't know the symbology, the symbolic language that they put in the Old Testament speaks of, if we don't understand how it's interrelated, we miss it. We miss Christ. And people want to say, well, when he returns, I'm going to know it, and it's not going to matter because we're all going to be caught up together. And when he returns, I'm going to see him and I'm going to know. Yes, unless you're deceived ahead of time, unless you're deceived before he returns. And I think there's a setup that people are going to be deceived. Also, how are we going to respond when the lions start to tear at us and start to tear at Israel? Are we going to rise up in our own power and strength? Are we going to call to Egypt for horses and shield and buckler so that they can protect us? Or are we going to call out to God with psalms and say, you're the one who saves us? You're the one, and I'm going to stand firm in my trust that you're going to be the one that saves me, even unto my own life, even unto death. Are you prepared to be a martyr for Christ? Are you prepared to die rather than exert your own authority and take up your sword in anger and frustration and steal and take someone's car, take their food or money by gun and force, and you become the lion who's tearing at the poor and is tearing at those other ones? I've had conversations. It frightens me. It frightens me about how others might respond and others might act. And I'm afraid that I will meet the the thievery, the anger, the hostility with something exactly the same. And I don't think that's what God wants. So, anyways, um, 10 o'clock. Yeah, 2 hours. I knew it was going to be a long one. Yeah, there's a lot going on with Lion. There's so much going on with Lion. Um, let's see if anyone is still here. If anyone's not falling asleep. Yeah, I fell asleep. Felt like I was going to fall asleep, but I didn't. Very happy about that. So, any questions, thoughts, and any comments? Or if you have any comments or thoughts afterwards, leave them in below if you're watching this later. And then hopefully at one point I'm going to get to um, this whole day of the Lord. It's so complex. It's so big. There's so much going on there. All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to go sleep. I have now been awake for 24 hours. Well, I had an hour and a half nap yesterday before work and maybe slept 30 minutes of work last night. I closed my eyes. I don't think I really slept. So I'm kind of telling a little bit of a tall tale. Exaggerating. Is that line? Yeah, I know, right? Rolling on the floor. I try not to do those exaggerations, but I tend to be prone to it. All right. Well, thank you, King Z, for hanging with me this whole time. I hope your family is blessed. I hope everything's working well with your friends and family. It's always a blessing to talk to you and hear from you. All right. I am going to end up now, and peace. Shalom, shalom. God bless.